And with that, the 2022 season comes to an end. Good night.
Sound matters. Be heard. Welcome to the podcast where you get exclusive behind-the-scenes tips to make your own show sound truly spectacular. This is Podtastic Audio.
Hey, what's happening? How are you doing today? Merry Christmas and happy holidays and happy Hanukkah and happy whatever holiday you like to celebrate this time of year. But as I release this episode, it is going to be coming into the Christmas weekend. I'm recording this a few days before Christmas, and probably by the time it gets out, maybe by the time you hear it, Christmas would have already happened, or it's Christmas Day right now. Who knows? But Merry Christmas to you, and I hope that you and your family and everyone around you has a happy and wonderful and safe, fantastic Christmas weekend. If you don't celebrate Christmas, well, happy holidays to you and your family. So here on Podtastic Audio, where I help you design your podcast without having to know all the fancy technology and all the fancy buttons and mixing boards and all the crazy high-end consoles, and especially without spending tons of money on crap and gear you don't even need. I mean, in fact, you can get your podcast going with a simple, basic USB microphone. In fact, you really could even do it with just your smartphone. But I would never do that with just that, because I can't imagine any show like ever taking off just using a basic iPhone. Not saying you can't do it. I'm saying I don't think there's ever been a show in the history of podcasts that have ever been so massive and the guy only did it from his smartphone, walking around. Not saying you can't do that, but I haven't seen a show take off that's been the platform to do it on. Now, on the other end, there are people that spend thousands, and I mean thousands of dollars on equipment and gear to make sure their podcast is the best of the best. I'm going to do it just like so-and-so, like fill in the blank podcaster, whoever they follow or like. And that seems to be the trend I see over the last year or so I've been doing this, is that when you start out, you really have no idea who or what your voice is going to be like, or your own voice. So you kind of mimic or kind of like follow another podcaster that you might listen to or like, and you kind of follow what they're doing, kind of mimic what they're doing, their style of doing stuff. Now, copying other people's style, whether it's YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is, any content creator, most content creators have copied their stuff from somebody else. If you just look at it, you're trying to figure out where's the original, whatever it is they're doing. You think about all the different things that are popular right now, like all the different trends that are on TikTok, Instagram, even YouTube, like the different styles of doing things. People just copy them from somebody else, trying to figure out where did the original actually come from. If so many people have done it, it's hard to track down the original source of things. But, we all have fun. We all enjoy it. And it's all a fun time. So as we come to a close on 2022, I want to say is that I know that there's many reasons why you podcast. There's reasons why I podcast. But I think that a lot of people get into podcasting with any real direction on what they want to do with their podcast. They just start it, and then they get kind of frustrated along the way. Like, why doesn't my show have tons of downloads? Why does that show have more downloads than my show does? And why does this show get an ad spot and I don't get an ad spot? Or why do they get a big name guest and I don't get a big name guest? We both have microphones, but we both have podcasts. They're both audio. Why aren't they the same? Well, technically, they're still not. I mean, on the surface level, yeah, you both have microphones. Yes, you're both doing audio podcasts. Yes, you are you and they are them. But did you ever think about maybe they have a better show than you? Or maybe they've been doing it longer, or maybe they're more experienced in this stuff than you are. There's a lot of factors that go in this kind of stuff. So being that it is the end of the year and people do get extremely jealous of other people. I mean, and think about it. Like, everybody gets jealous, even people at the very tippy top. I'm talking like the Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. They even do get jealous. You're thinking like, Chris, what do they have to get jealous about? Well, when you get to that level of success, the jealousy is like, well, I just bought a $10 million yacht. Oh, I just see somebody that has a $50 million yacht. So you have to buy a $100 million yacht. And then you see somebody with a $200 million yacht. And then they have to go do that. They get jealous of each other and they kind of like try to keep up with the Joneses and keep outdoing each other. When you get to that level, that's all that really matters. You have so much money, you can buy whatever you want. It's just that you see other people that have other things that you want, so you just outdo each other. Now, just the other day, I put out a Twitter poll saying, what do you define as success for your podcast? Because every podcaster has a different idea of what a successful podcast is to them. And I'm really only talking about like the smaller independent shows. I'm sure the bigger shows, like the massive shows, like their version of success is that they made few $1,000,000 this month on their episode or whatever, things like that. Things that we couldn't even fathom what that's even really like. So I put the Twitter poll out this week. Okay, so the poll reads as this. As a podcaster, how do you define success? So with the number one answer with 49% of the vote comes in with fun I have podcasting. Now, I've always said, always have fun when you podcast. And if you're having fun and you're having a good time podcasting, then your show is a successful one. And it seems that most of you that have voted agree that if you're having fun with your podcast, that's what really matters. And coming in second place is, I would think this is kind of obvious, with 36% of the vote comes in with number of downloads. So yeah, if your show has, say, 5 downloads an episode, yeah, okay, 5 people listen, that's great. But if you have 500, you're thinking, wow, that is quite a successful show. But just remember, the download numbers can always be manipulated. There are different paying services that people can pay for to instantly give them more downloads. And also, too, sometimes if you're subscribed to a show, like on your Apple iPhone or something like that, if you hit subscribe and the new episode automatically downloads to your phone without you listening to it, it downloads. It now shows a download on your media host. Oh, I got a download. Great. But what if the person never listens to it? It's sitting on their phone and then eventually falls off. That happens, too. Just because it's downloaded doesn't mean somebody actually pushed play on it. So you got to think about that stuff, too. But like I said, most people would probably say downloads is probably the one I would think that people would really say measures a successful podcast, the more downloads you have. But just because you have X amount of downloads, think about this too. It's also the quality of the downloads too, not just the number of the downloads. So for example, if your show is talking to movie directors and you're talking about how you would change movies and movie direction and how you would be a good director for movies, or talk about movies that was horribly directed and how you would change things. If you're only getting 5 downloads, it doesn't sound like a lot of people. But what if one of the people who listen to your show is Steven Spielberg? Then would it be worth it to you to have a show that only has 5 downloads, but one of your listeners happens to be Steven Spielberg himself, finding out information that you give him? That'd be incredible. That'd be well worth it. Versus a show that has 5,000 listeners that could give 2 rips about anything you're talking about. They just enjoy your show just to enjoy it, but not taking any value from it. So the very next thing I have here that got in third place with only 10% of the vote, only 10% said getting paid. Now, actually making real money with your podcast. Now, I know there's lots of ways that you can make money with your podcast. It's been around for a while now, actually. I mean, there's Patreon. You can use that to get paid from your listeners. There are some ad placements you can get, but the payout is very, very small. I think it's like for every download, most services pay you maybe if you're lucky, a penny. Maybe a penny, maybe even less than a penny. I don't know. It's very, very small. Maybe even a few cents. The point is this: even if you have like 200 plays on an episode, which I think is quite a bit, 200 plays on an episode, you're still maybe making, if you do a weekly show, you're still maybe making, what is that? Maybe like, I don't know, $50, $20. I don't know. It's not enough to quit your job over, is what I'm saying. It's money, yes, but it's not enough to really put all your eggs into that basket and say, oh, we're going to do ads and we're just quitting. The only shows that really make any money posting ads off the ads are the ones that get millions, and I'm talking millions of downloads every single like month or whatever it is. I mean, lots and lots of downloads. Like, we're talking less than the 1% club of the top podcasts in the world. Now, to my surprise, the least voted answer in this survey, the one that I thought for sure would be number one or number two, it was the least picked. And with only 5% of the vote on what as a podcaster, how do you define success for your show? With only 5% of people said talking to VIPs. I thought for sure this would be number one, because I know a lot of podcasters get into podcasting and now they have a podcast. They're going to pitch, all these big name guests to get on their show. Like, I want to have so-and-so on my show. I want to have Steven Spielberg. I want to have whoever it is, fill in the blank. I don't know. And they want to get these people on their show. It seems like that's a driving factor for success, because I'll see this posted a lot on social media. They'll say, oh, I just booked a great guest. Oh, I have a fantastic A-lister coming on my show this week. Oh, it's amazing. I just booked this big guest. It's going to be great. Awesome. I can't wait to share it. To them, I would think that would be the definition of success. So 5% actually said that having a big name is what really makes a difference for their show and makes it a successful show. Now, however you decide what is successful for your show is your show. And from the majority, I would say have fun creating your podcast. So going back to the whole jealousy thing, I got me thinking about this, is how, like I said, some podcasters really kind of follow the big names in podcasting. They want to mimic their show. And if this podcaster, say independent show like mine or yours, has a ton of money to spend on stuff, they will basically build themselves a studio, buy themselves the best equipment, the best gear, and the best camera rigs. I just came across a podcast probably a few weeks ago. I don't listen to their show, but I have followed them on social media and I have seen their clips on either TikTok, Instagram Reels, things of that sort. Now, I'm not going to mention the name of the show at all, just in case they're listening or anything like that. I'm not trying to talk trash about their show. I'm just saying that they're a fairly new show, being that they've been around maybe a year or so, like a year or so old. It's a talk show kind of show. They have cameras, multiple cameras going on, each person talking. In every interview they do, it looks like it's live in the studio. Like it's a studio thing. They got cameras on each person talking. They've got Shure SM7B microphones. They've got really good lighting. I mean, really good lighting and really good camera work. So each camera is really good. So I'm thinking that they spent a fortune on creating this entire podcast. Like, they got the best gear, best lighting. They got the sounds incredible from what I've heard. It sounds great. But the subject matter is kind of, I wouldn't say it's okay. It's just that they're trying to mimic some of the bigger name shows, like the Joe Rogan show. Everybody seems like they want to copy the Joe Rogan show. Like, Joe Rogan, I'm going to do my show exactly like his. I got money. I'm going to build a studio that looks like Joe Rogan's studio. And I'm going to have, oh, he has that microphone. I'm getting that microphone. I'm getting that same gear and same setup. And I'm going to do a show exactly like the way he does his show. Okay, great. And even if you have the same content and the same everything, I mean, you're talking almost a clear mimic of his show will still do better than your show by light years. And you're like, why isn't my show successful? I'm doing the same thing he's doing. But you got to remember, one thing that he has that you don't have is that he is Joe Rogan and you're not. And also, he's got like, before he even started his podcast, he had like 20 years of building an audience. He was on television. He was, I think he was in movies too, stand-up comedy. He was hosting the UFC, still does that. So he's popular. He's a celebrity, right? He has that celebrity status going into podcasting. And he got in early in podcasting too. I think he started his show like 2009-ish, somewhere around there. Kind of the earlier days of podcasting when it was still kind of kicking off. Like, the only people who had podcasts were like tech nerds or maybe celebrities had their podcast going. And now everybody and their mother has a podcast, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can do that too. But the point is this, is that show I was talking about, that podcast, been around for almost 2 years now. Well, a year now. They have all this money invested. And I decided to go check them out on Listen Notes. Now, I know people seem to say Listen Notes is garbage. It's horrible. It's not true. It's fake. It's false. It's whatever. It's all this stuff. I take Listen Notes as kind of like a barometer of, it's not exact science. It's kind of a close measure. It's like, if you were to say, how many people are in that crowd over there? and you said, it looks like about 200 people. And we did a head count. And it turns out it was like 250. Okay, it's not exact, but it's pretty close, right? So that's kind of the way I look at listen notes. Your listen notes score happens if you fall into the top 10% or better. Now, I know they say that, like, okay, now you're competing with shows that are already dead and things that sort. So most podcasts should be in at least the top 10% club or more. If they do a normal show regularly, they're not skipping out on things. The way Listen Notes does their rankings, I'm not entirely sure exactly how that works. I think some of it has to do with your reviews, which I think is horrible, but sometimes some of your reviews, I think, go into the equation to figure out where your listen score kind of falls into. Probably, I don't know how they figure how many downloads you get, how they figure out that information. Maybe it's your social media presence. Maybe it's your web presence, your SEO. Maybe it's something. All those factors probably fall into the camp of like where your listen score falls into, your percentage, so to speak. I know this show is in the top 10%. I know the Chris and Christine show is in the top 5%. But in a lot of shows, speaking of Joe Rogan, he's in the top 0.000 whatever 1% or whatever. It's like less than a fraction of percent. That's where he is, and it shows him being in that camp. So going back to the show that spent a ton of money on gear and equipment for their podcast, trying to mimic the whole Joe Rogan thing, they're not even in the top 10%. They've been doing this for over a year, spent tons of money on this. And if they're having fun with their show, great. They are successful. But if they're trying to like mimic Joe Rogan, they're trying to get a ton of downloads and a ton of plays, and they're trying to get ad spots and get paid because they spent a fortune on gear, then maybe they need to retweak their podcast. And just for the record, just because you spend all this money on stuff doesn't mean money is going to fall from heaven to pay you back for all the gear you have. A show can be very successful with just a basic, like a Samsung Q2U microphone and a laptop in somebody's office. They can have a fantastic show. In fact, you can have guests come in all remotely, of course, and with decent software and decent recording gear, you can make it sound phenomenal. And that's the thing. You can make it sound great and have a great conversation without having to spend all this money on gear and lighting and video and all that stuff. And with video, do you need video for your podcast? I mean, you can have it, and then people like really want to double down on video. But the numbers have shown that audio outplays video 20-1. 20-1 for your video to audio podcast. So you're thinking like, why even do the video in the first place? Unless you really have to be on camera for some reason. In that case, like this show I'm talking about, they do like little, I don't know, minute clips or whatever. Maybe do something like that. But if you can put the whole show on YouTube, you can do that too. I don't know. The whole talking head show for like an hour or 2 hour plus, I can't imagine anybody watching that thing end to end, glued to the screen for 2 hours, watching a talking head show. I just can't imagine doing that. But that's just me. I would rather be doing something else with my day. But like I've always said, you podcast how you want to do it. It's your show. Don't let me or anybody else tell you how to do your show. The sky's the limit. Be creative. Let your creative juices get flowing here and design the show that you want to enjoy and consume. If it means you're going to do a whole YouTube sit-down show and you want to do that, then you go right ahead. Have fun doing it. If you want to do a live stream show, go ahead and do that. If you want to just talk into your phone and do that, you go right ahead. It's your show. Do it however makes you feel, comfortable and something that you want to listen to, something you're proud of. And if having fun, like most people say, is the main goal of your podcast, then yes, you are a successful show. Congratulations. Pat yourself on the back for having a successful podcast. So as we move into 2023, it's kind of weird how even saying that makes you sound kind of weird. 2023, I thought yesterday was 2021. Here we are going into 2023. What? That's nuts. Crazy now. So as we go into the next year, I am trying to create some new things for Podtastic Audio. I'm actually taking it to the next level. When I mean next level, I'm talking about actually taking Podtastic Audio and turning it into a business, not just a fun little podcast to help you do stuff. So if you would like me to be a guest on your podcast, I might be available. I'll check calendar dates and things of that sort. But if you want to, you always can hit me up at podtasticaudio.com. And I'll put a link to that into the show notes. Actually, I put links to all that stuff into the show notes below. My email is at podtasticaudio@gmail.com. But yes, that's also in the show notes. So you can click, and it takes you exactly where you want to go. So if you want to have me on your show, we might be able to book something, set something up. If you need personal one-on-one coaching to help you with your podcast, I can put you on the schedule. It's coaching with Chris, figuring out your podcasting stuff. We can do a Zoom call and figure out what you're doing. And maybe I can show you some things that I've done personally and hold your hand and create your amazing podcast. There is a link to schedule and book with me for that service on podtasticaudio.com. And until next time, you keep on making your amazing podcast, your amazing audio, and your fantastic Merry Christmas. And I'll catch you next time.